Okay, so I just recorded this video, but it was too long, and I'm going to try to go through this a lot faster. But I'm going to show you my favorite trilogies, and some of them are actually considered trilogies, and some of them aren't. I'm also going to not be looking at the camera because I have to look what I'm doing. So I'll be looking at me, so I'll be a little bit off, and it's going to be ridiculous. But either way, I'm going to go see The Whale tonight, the new Aronofsky Sad movie. Which I think is just going to be a repeat of The Wrestler, but this time he's big, so we'll see. Anyways, I'm going to start with probably the most depressing and going down to something a little bit lighthearted. So, which, yes, I do like some happy movies, so I promise. But I will start with one of the most beautifully shot trilogies, and it's from Pedro Costa, who I think is brilliant. His films are very difficult to get into for a lot of people, understandably. The first film of his I saw was Vitalina Varela at the New York Film Festival, and I loved how it was shot. The way he plays with light and shadows, I think, is just incredible. And you could literally just stay on a moment for a fucking hour, and I would just be glued to it. I think it is fantastic. And that opened me up to his earlier films, which start with, or at least for this trilogy, Letters from Fontanhas, I believe is how you say it, and takes place in Fontanhas, Portugal. It starts with Ozos, which is not my favorite of the three, but it is filmed beautifully. It's just incredible to look at, and a lot of these films kind of focus on the struggling working class people and people that are just kind of stuck in really, really bad places in their lives and trying to, just continue on as it is. And in Vonda's Room, which is probably my favorite of the trilogy and probably the most difficult to really get into because it is long and it's filmed on a camcorder. So, and it takes place in a lot of these dilapidated areas and these communities that are being torn down to put up new buildings. And from what I can tell, the character Vonda is in, I think, Colossal Youth right afterwards, and she's in a better place, in a better situation. And I'm not sure if that's because they put her there, the city, the town, or somehow she got there. I don't know. But I'm hoping that's what happened to these people that were, thrown out of their community, and after it was torn down, they were put into other places. Fingers fucking crossed. And then that goes into Colossal Youth, which is, I guess, it's a bit more poetic and plays with narrative structure more, and that kind of goes into Horse Money, which I think is probably one of the most incredible things I've ever seen in my entire life. It's just powerful. It's otherworldly. He's incredible, and I think more people should watch his films, even though they are definitely a challenge. I think you should challenge yourself and open yourself up to what he has to offer, because the way he shows these communities and ways of life are just, as is, but they are beautiful in their own way. And it's, comes from a place of privilege, clearly, to say something like that. But once you see it, you'll understand what I mean, hopefully. And then going into another very cold person, Michael Haneke, which some, I guess, one friend of mine says that, he has a very optimistic idea about people, but his films kind of say otherwise for me. And with this trilogy, which I think is just kind of a trilogy because they threw these films together, but these are his earliest films, major feature films. And it came in a Criterion box set, and it starts with The Seventh Continent, about a family that is going to kill themselves. Benny's Video, about a young boy who ends up killing someone and catches it on video, and the family tries to cover it up. 71 Fragments of a Chronology of Chance, which is a film I just watched recently, and it's one of my favorites of his because it was a precursor to my favorite film of his, which is Code Unknown. And it's very similar structure, where it's snapshots of different people living, and it all leads up to a shooting at a bank, and you're trying to figure out kind of who is it? It could literally be anybody because all these people are living very miserable lives in their own ways. Not easy to get through either. They will put you in a very dark place, but they're still very powerful and they do exactly what they need to do. And I highly recommend them. Now going into the Depression trilogy, literally the Depression trilogy by Lars von Trier, who is a giant fucking dickhead. But I think he's made some really great films, or at least films that have really touched me in my like life over the years. A lot more when I was younger, because I think he's kind of like a giant boy who has like a magnifying glass and he's burning ants. That's him as a director. But I still find what he does to be completely fascinating, even when I find he is way off base with certain things. But starting with that, Antichrist, which is about a couple who is reeling from the death of their child, mostly the mother, but then it gets a little bit more sinister. Not even a little bit, very sinister, and even problematic for a lot of people, and very gross, very horrific images happen in it. But I think it is powerful, and it's very successful, and I think it's horrific. So if you want to be dragged into a very dark place that will haunt you forever, hey! And then a film that threw me into a very deep depression and made everything kind of make sense to me when I was very young in a very uncomfortable way. Excuse my piss poor vocabulary. I went to theater school, which was mostly like camp. So I'm not a smart person, but I still enjoy these. And Melancholia, very depressing, but also the most relatable film about depression I have ever seen. And I can't imagine anything really coming close to it. But when seeing this in the theater, I was like high off my ass. And it was like opening the blinds to a whole new world that I was just like, oh, this is what I'm feeling. Great, now I have a name for it, and really hurt my life. But it's been something that I cherish a lot, and I will love forever. And Kirsten Dunst, excuse me, let me get that right, is just fantastic, and I am very proud that she was able to take over this role, which was originally for Penelope Cruz, who I was so excited to see for it, but then she dropped out to do fucking Pirates of the Caribbean. Are you fucking kidding me? So then, she got to take on the benefits, but not so much because Lars von Trier opened his mouth too much, which he should not do in public. And then to finish it off, Nymphomaniac, Volume 1 and 2. It's basically a long, like 5.5 hour movie, or 6 hours. Not my favorite by any means of his films, probably on like a lower tier for me. But there are some really fantastic moments in this series, like these two films. And even though the ending I think is bullshit, I think it's almost like a parody of like his film, like film endings, where you're like, oh, I know what's going to happen. It comes from a fucking mile away and you just know what he's going to do. So it's not even shocking. It's just stupid. Without that in mind, there are some really incredible moments in here, and especially in the director's cut and Volume 2, where Charlotte Gainsbourg gets pregnant and decides to have an abortion, even though, doctors and men are against it, and then she, because of that, has to do it herself, and it is very terrifying, and very, very, very visual. A lot going on there. So now getting in a little bit lighter mood, but with some darkness. The Living Trilogy by Roy Andersson, Swedish director. He also doesn't like Ingmar Bergman, which is one of my favorite directors, and I find that hilarious because Ingmar Bergman's also Swedish. But with this, I don't count Swedish Love Story. It's that was like years before he went into like the vision that people know him for now. And with these, Pigeon Sat on a Branch, Reflecting on Existence, was the first one of his I watched, and this put me on board. I wish I had watched them in order, but this was the most accessible at the time. So it is my favorite because it was the first one I saw, and because they are so similar, I can tell why people are like, oh, these are the better ones. It's like, well, because you saw it first, probably. But they're all very, very similar and approach the subject matter of life and its ridiculousness in the same kind of way. It's like watching a Wes Anderson film with like the the symmetry, and it's really cool, but nowhere near as obnoxious as Wes Anderson. Sorry, that's just my opinion. I don't like him, but applause to those who do. I think he is a master at what he does. I just don't find it interesting. So if you want a version of if you don't like Wes Anderson, but you like, maybe the way things look, try Roy Anderson. He's the version of that I much more prefer. Very funny, but also very deep and very very, 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 funny, deep, and moving about life. Okay, so this isn't really a trilogy, but they came together in a 3-pack, and therefore I will count it as a trilogy because this is my favorite modern director, Hong Sang-soo, and we have Nobody's Daughter Hawan, Arsun-hee, and Oki's movie. I don't know if I said those right, but my apologies. Korean film director, and a lot of his movies are very similar as well, in a way, like deceptively so. It's just like mostly conversations between people, and a lot of things very similar to Hong Sang-soo's life in general, about like usually a film director or an actress or actor, some kind of people in the arts usually going through, struggling with life in some way, and like the relationships between men and women. And they're also very short. If you want to like watch something or don't want to be like running into a daunting running time, like this is only 80 minutes, 88 minutes, 90 minutes. Quick, easy, fantastic. It's like a breath of fresh air. Me and my friend were also saying that it's kind of like a visit to the spa. Like you just go and have like a good like relaxing time, but you will leave the place feeling fulfilled in some way. And or at least for me, it took the first film of his I saw was Hotel by the River, which I was like, okay, this is what he does. Okay. And then I watched The Woman Who Ran. And I was like, this is what he does. And I loved that movie. That's my favorite of his. So, and now I've seen everything of his except for his newest film, Walk Up, which he comes out with different films, several films a year. And then his very first film, which I hear is very different from all of his other films. Okay. So now the Before trilogy, which is probably one of the most popular, especially if anybody in like the art community and blah, blah, blah. But it's definitely one of the more accessible, and it's Richard Linklater who did Boyhood and like School of Rock, and it's starts with Before Sunrise and then goes into Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, Before Midnight. Also pretty short movies. This one's 101 minutes, this one is 80 minutes, and then this one is like 109, and it's Ethan Hawke, Julie Delpy going through different stages of the relationship between these two characters, and that's all I really want to say. I would say just watch them. They're beautiful. They're fantastic. The dialogue between the two of them is magical. I don't know anyone who doesn't like them. And if you don't, that's fine. It's all subjective. Art is subjective. So, and then to a beautiful little coming-of-age series, the Apu trilogy by Satyajit Ray, who is an Indian director. Fantastic. It starts with, it's about a little boy named Apu, and it follows him with his family, like in the first film. I'm not going to even try to butcher the names of these because I don't want to embarrass myself more than I already am. But it's great. It's one of the more, I think, the most popular at all of them that a lot of people really love. It's pretty straightforward, but it's about him growing up with his family, and then him as a young teen going to school away from his village into like the city and learning new things there, and dealing with his relationship with his mother and family like away from where he is. And I watched this I finished this movie on my phone on the subway, and then I was at the very end of it, and I sat down on the subway platform before walking home and finished it and just cried. Ugh, it's great, it's sad, but also just really beautiful. And then it ends with the final film as him as an adult and his adult life, which I don't want to like give much away, but I would say the whole series is just a wonderful journey. I love me a coming of age film, so these three together, just fantastic. And then my favorite is the Coker trilogy, which I think is just life-affirming, beautiful. I don't like a lot of stuff like that usually, but when it's done in a way that I can fully connect to in like an artistic way, and just feel the love that's in it, it's these three fucking movies. And it starts with Where is the Friend's House, about a little boy who is trying to help his little classmate and give him his homework, because if the kid comes back to class without his homework, he's gonna fail and stuff, and it's really sad. So he's like bouncing from like village to village trying to find this kid, and he doesn't know where he lives, and it's like, it's just so great. Oh my god, it's beautiful. I love it so much, and I was not prepared to be fully in love with it when I watched it. And then I did a double feature of And Life Goes On and Through the Olive Trees, the 2 consecutive films in the trilogy. At the IFC Center. I saw them back to back the same day. So I watched And Life Goes On, which is about the film director of the first one going on a like road trip with his son to the village where they filmed the first film. It's not really Abbas Kiarostami, it's someone playing his character basically, and they're trying to find the boy from the first movie after a giant earthquake had fucked up the village of Koker. And it's beautiful. And then the third film is about two villagers in the second film that were playing a couple that was like butting heads, and it's about them outside of the film also kind of butting heads, where he's like in love with her but she's rejecting him the entire time, and he's like persistent, which is a little icky. But also you know that there is a love between them, especially by the end. So it's more of like she's saying no because she has to because of her family. So it's not just like, ew, no, I don't want you. And the more you persist, it'll actually work. No, straight guys don't fucking think that. This is a very specific story and a very specific, dynamic. And I think the 3 films together are just incredible. They're meta and really exciting. And if you want something that's like super life affirming and beautiful, I don't really recommend those a lot to a lot of people, but these 3, go watch them. Also the Criterion Collection did these really cool kind of covers for them and like containers. I don't know how to say anything because but they're also kind of confusing, so it's a bit of a mess, but it still looks cool. So thank you, Criterion, for making all of these available, and not just Criterion. There's other people involved. Curzon, Artificial Eye, and Cinema Guild. I love y'all because y'all are giving us Hong Sang-soo all the time, and Magnolia Pictures, and yeah, all those. I do want the Blu-rays of Fontañas, so get that together, Criterion. Get it together. But either way, that's what I have to offer right now. And I was just very bored, and I hope someone enjoyed this. So thank y'all, and go watch them.